Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Today we are hosting a webinar and we speak to Professor Stanislav, Ivanov and Professor Craig Webster. Welcome, gentlemen, about their new book, Future Tourism in Robonomic World. And before we are getting the discussion started, I think it is wise to set some house rules about the fact like, okay, we would love you guys to not use the chat, but the Q&A option in the overview of Teams. So you can post all your questions over there. It would be amazing if you can leave all your mics muted so we can have a very fluent discussion and conversation. The conversation in itself will last from 3 till 3:30, the time zone we are in. So for half an hour, and the next half an hour we will answer your questions which are posted in the Q&A. Having said that, well, let's return back to the book, indeed, Future Tourism in a Robonomic World. It is a groundbreaking book. And it's actually the first outlook through the futuristic lens about the rapid changes that may occur in hospitality and tourism from a technological perspective. And it is not to be seen as the forecast, but more about, okay, what kind of discussions of possibilities could there be in that sense. It is all about the change given in the concepts of robonomics, about AI and automation. And it is one of the webinars part of the journey from HMSL, Hotel Management School Leeuwarden in the Netherlands, and a joint cooperation with the European Tourism Future Institute, ETFI. Hotel Management School Leeuwarden being the largest hotel school in Europe and unique in offering a design-based education, whereas ETFI is only a Tourism Futures Research Center, which hosts the Journal of Tourism Futures, sorry. And for the Hotel Management School, we also have their own journal, Research and Hospitality Management. I would like to give the floor to Frederick, my co-host.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I would like to introduce you all to the panel here. Yeah, they have so many credentials, so I have to read it a little bit of the paper. I'm going to start in any order, but Professor Stanislav Ivanov is first on my list. Stanislav Ivanov, also by the name of Stan, is a professor in tourism economics at the Varna University of Management and a director of Zangador Research Institute. And he is the founder and the co-editor-in-chief of two academic journals. And those are the European Journal of Tourism Research and Robonomics, the Journal of the Automated Economy. As a lot of guys, he loves Star Wars, so may the force be with us all. Then I would like to introduce Professor Craig Webster. A PhD, is a full professor of hospitality innovation and leadership in the Ball State University. His research interests include the political economy of tourism, robots, and AI. Can I introduce you?
Yes, please. Thank you.
The lady across the table is Marit de Vries. She's a lecturer in revenue management at the Hotel Management School Leeuwarden, which is part of the NHL Stenden. She's also a hotel manager at the Motors Hotel at NHL Stenden. And she is a champion of technological innovation. And she's really passionate about technology in education.
Thank you.
Yeah. Of course, talking about me, I'm a consultant, lecturer, and I'm a really enthusiastic guy who loves to do cool new things about innovation, technology, and I would like all the business processes of the industry work smarter, faster, and more efficiently. And I like to use VR and AI with that. So yeah, I think that's the full introduction of the people who are here. Let's start with the first question.
Yes, shall we continue? We are actually now heading towards the discussion part where Frederick and myself are going to ask some questions to, as we agreed upon in the beginning, Stan and Greg, how we may address them. So Stan, can I ask you the first question? What is the book fundamentally about and why did you write it?
Thank you. This is a great question. The book is fundamentally about us humans, and how we will interact with technology in the future, and how we will use technology to fundamentally transform the hospitality industry. This is what the book looks around. So it considers how technology will be infused in the economy, and how the economy will be transformed from a largely human-based economy, what we currently have, to an automation-based economy, which is known as a Robonomic economic system. And when you change fundamentally the economic system, transferring decision-making from humans to artificial intelligence, changing labor for automation technologies, then you change the society and you change the way hospitality services will be delivered. So practically, it is a book about us, humans, and how we will live in such an economic system as employees, as tourists, as human beings.
Okay, thank you for that very clear and elaborate answer to that. But if I then look into the book in itself, there's a specific structure being used where the introduction is actually bringing us back to 1968. It has been a while, and we were not even there yet. But how does the structure of the book work? Why did you choose for this setup?
Yeah, the structure of the book actually evolved. It was an emerging structure. It includes three parts. The first part includes three sections, three chapters, which show from how technology will change tourism from the eyes of the consumer. So the first chapter brings us back to 1968, so that there's a person that goes on a trip, an American going to a trip to Europe, and we see how tourism was delivered at that time. Then the next chapter, 2068, looks 100 years into the later, after 1968, which is currently less than 50 years into the future, and shows a similar trip of a person who is in our initial discussion. It was a descendant of the person from the first chapter. How things in tourism will change. So we have the same trip, but 100 years later after the first trip. And then the third chapter is a discussion of the changes, technological changes that happen within these 100 years. The second part of the books lays the theoretical fundamentals of robonomics. Robonomics is an economic system that largely relies on robots, artificial intelligence, and automation technologies for the production of goods and delivery of services, rather than human labor. This does not mean that human labor is not used, just that the majority of goods and services are produced by AI and automation technologies rather than by humans. It also means that few humans will work, and they will need to have other engagements. So in that part, which is divided into three chapters, chapters 1, 2, and 3, we said what are the principles of robonomics, the Robonomic economic system, what are the characteristics of such system, what are the drivers that show that such an economic system is how to say, highly likely in our eyes, although it is not guaranteed that things will develop in these directions. So we are talking about 5 decades into the future. And then the second chapter deals with comparison of the benefits of a Robonomic economic system and the costs, the challenges that such system creates. And the final chapter looks at the potential social solutions to the challenges of the Robonomic system, because definitely the massive implementation of robots and AI in society will definitely change the fabric of society, which will require significant actions by governments. The third part of the book, which is from chapters 4 to 11, deals with different aspects of tourism in the Robonomic system. The first chapter focuses on what Robonomics actually means for tourism and hospitality. So we translate the principles, drivers, characteristics, benefits, challenges, and solutions of Robonomics to the language of tourism and hospitality, and how these characteristics, drivers, solutions, etc., how they influence, how at least we consider will influence tourism and hospitality into the future. So this is like a bird's eye view of the potential changes. Later, the other chapters, they delve deeper into specific changes, like customer interaction, creating hospitality services and experiences, the design of robot-friendly facilities, or the automated company of the future, interactions and with robots and relationships with robots, etc. And finally, we have a chapter which was not in the initial book proposal, but it evolved based on together with the evolution of technologies. It is one of the chapters is AI co-created chapter. So we asked ChatGPT what it considers. Think is not the correct verb. What it considers that the future will be, and how in a such society, and how tourism will be transformed, and of course, Craig and I looked at these at this output by ChatGPT, and we evaluated it. So more or less, this is the logic of the whole book.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Craig is dying to also get a question now. Craig.
Well, that depends on the question, really.
Yeah, well, you're going to get it, Craig. When we talk about AI, a lot of people see a doom scenario. We all see movies like Terminator, where dark robots kill whole humanity. So, is this book a warning for future generations? Or do you think it will get a positive outcome?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a warning. I mean, there's some cautionary elements in there, but it's about the future that's going to happen. It's more or less inevitable, as we see that the technology is not going to stop, and it can't really be stopped effectively. But we have to think of the ways it will be incorporated and workarounds in terms of how humanity is going to be challenged by a lot of the changes that happen in society. For example, if you're talking about the automation of pretty much everything, well, what's the role of humans? That's an interesting question. How do you deal with humans? There's the question of things such as universal basic income come into play, and how we keep people busy and happy in an environment in which they're not really needed for a lot of the necessary things that need to be done in terms of the production of wealth, the delivery of services even. There also has to be a question of, how we mitigate some of the bad things that happen, the negative externalities, and how we sort of make sure that we have progress that's acceptable and that it's good for humans. And that transcends tourism. That goes into pretty much all productive and service industries. But going back to, in terms of Stanislav talking about the chapters, I think the real innovation of this book, where it was his suggestion, part one, is writing sort of a fictional element about what happened in the past in 1968 to 2068. And that was a real challenge to write, but also I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for thought about how quickly society has changed in 100 years, or will change in 100 years.
And Greg, building up on that one, 1968, why that year? Is there any specific reason for that?
Well, there are two reasons for it. I think that's the year I was born, but also I think that it's politically, it's a reason to say that that's a new era that happened in 1968. 1968 was just a complete chaos throughout the world. You have the events in France in May. You have the invasion of Czechoslovakia. The US was on fire. The Tet Offensive was going on. And after that, it was like the whole world sort of calmed down. There was that brief, massive inflammation of all things political and economic in 1968. And following that, things changed a little bit. We thought there was sort of a general understanding of what would happen in Europe and the stability. Remember, the Cold War was going to be more or less a permanent division, and people accepted that from 1968 until, I guess, probably the late 1980s. And the world sort of changed qualitatively from 1968. So that's a natural way. Also, when I was writing some of these earlier chapters, I traveled when I was young with my parents in Europe, and there are elements, and every time I travel now, it seems different because there are little things, like I mentioned it, and this might sound very trite, but when I was a 10-year-old boy or so, I remember being in Europe, and every country had a different currency. And my mother would collect coins because you had the trick of trying to figure out how to change enough money from things that might sound weird, traveler's checks, because they used to exist. And when you ran out of money, well, then you stopped buying things. And then you wanted to have enough money to get you through a country, but not too much that you have to change money back because there was a cost to that. And then I'm sure some of you might even have inherited little boxes from your mothers and grandmothers of change, of money that doesn't exist anymore. The Deutschmark, the French franc, lira, little boxes of coins that are really worthless now, but are sort of a leftover from that period when people had to have money. They had coins. You couldn't change coins into something else. And they're kept in little boxes by the grandmother or whatever. And now they're being stored all over the world.
True.
Little things like that.
When we talk about financial aspects, I'm jumping to chapter 6 a little bit. So what are some of the economic perspectives when we talk about an automated future for tourism or hospitality hotels? And maybe you can talk a little bit about cost and benefits. And the question is for Greg or Stanislav.
Let Stanislav start with that.
Yeah, probably it will be easier for me because I practically wrote this chapter about the automated company. I think that the automated company in the future will be, there will be companies that will be completely automated. Even we may have a situation when we have artificial intelligence owning tourism and hospitality companies. This will definitely require that we have changes in the legislation. From economic point of view, the use of automation technologies will lead to dividing tourism companies into two large groups. Some which will be largely automated, they will focus on very low costs. This will be their competitive advantage. While others that will use human labor, they will have a higher cost base, which means that they will have to find other order winners, other competitive advantage, and this will be the authenticity, this will be the quality of the service that they offer. There are many advantages of using artificial intelligence and automating services, but of course they will depend on the positioning of the company and its size.
Interesting to make a little bridge there. There's on Netflix. There's a science fiction series, and of course I forgot the name. But there is a hotel being run by AI, and the AI character is Edgar Allan Poe, and I think the name pops up. But that's really interesting. So you have an AI running a physical entity. I would like to get back to Craig, because when we talk about movies and what may have inspired you, what did you? How many science fiction movies did you watch, and which of them had the most influence? I can guess you have Star Wars, but you also have Star Trek, and just to name two really competitive ones, but.
I think my writing and influence is less influenced by science fiction than Stanislav's is. Stanislav is much more the science fiction guy than I am. He's much more of a fan. I mean, you only have to see his house to see that he's quite enamored with science fiction. I'm less so. I'm much more a person that thinks about the past, and also I've been trained sort of in a brutalist sort of view of history, because I went to university at Binghamton University, so I was very enamored with Emanuel Wallerstein and some of his colleagues. So I'm very much thinking about history and historical changes over 500-year chunks of history or so. So I'm much more likely to talk about like the Peasants' Revolt in Britain in 1381 than I am sort of many future events. But I see that in a context, and I understand, for example, the modern pandemic of COVID-19 as sort of the changes that happened then as being in some ways similar to what happened in 1381 in Britain and throughout Europe. So, Stanislav can tell you more. He knows everything about science fiction. I think much more historical and long-term trajectories.
Okay, then
sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Sorry. Yeah, Greg, I'm very curious because you're focusing on the history part, but are there any lessons from history which we can learn now already, seen from the period 1968 till now, what we could do differently in the upcoming period till 2068?
Well, I mean, that's a big issue. I really haven't thought about that from 1968, what we can learn for the future. There may be some elements in terms of, we can look at the Soviet sort of experience with centralized planning, and we can see there's some problems with top-down management of economies. Although policy and regulation there should be a logic to certain regulations. They shouldn't be pie in the sky and implemented regardless of what people want. And I think there's some elements of human participation and democracy that are important to make things function properly within a society and an economy.
Thank you.
Maybe it's nice to we have 51 people more or less in the Teams environment. Feel free to do a question in the Q&A because we haven't got any question yet. So please fill in your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat, please. So yeah, maybe this question will trigger a lot of questions. Yeah, I really love chapter 9. Who wrote chapter 9?
Daniel Wright.
That's a safe answer for you both. I have a question about it. Who can answer the best? Let's see. So chapter 9 is about sex, health, and wellness, and the relationships between humans and robots in tourist resorts. So when we talk about these things, what benefits or downsides would that have? Or interaction between, maybe for health or maybe for pleasure.
Stanislav, you want to start with this one?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely, when the robots become much more sophisticated, I wouldn't say sentient because probably this is not going to happen anytime soon. But when they become more sophisticated and we can have human-level conversation with them, then it will be probably like natural to have relationships with them. Of course, some people will have relationships like you have this robot as a helper at home. But also such robots in a tourism context, they can work as housekeepers or as waiters, although not always you need a humanoid design. Of course, at one point when you have the robot so resembling a human being, at one point humans may have even sexual relationships with them. Definitely this has some positive and some negative aspects. Definitely from a negative point of view, this may lead to substitution of natural human relationships, because if a robot can satisfy you the need for love and communication and romantic relationship, then probably this is going to hurt quite significantly the natural growth of population in the long term. We already have a demographic crisis. in many countries, and this may even worsen this situation. But at another point, such relationships can help people who are anyway lonely and communicate with someone, so they may have also a therapeutic impact, positive impact.
Yeah. What I like about this chapter is it really deals with something that is largely taboo, the thought of sexual relationships with robots. And I also think it's really interesting because we already have technologies that deal with sexuality. It's just that actually there's a revolution in technologies now. You're having more male-oriented technologies than there were historically. So we've had technologies for sex that have been largely gynocentric, and it's changing. And I think that's an issue. But we also have the question of sort of how do you deal with human beings, their emotions, the physicality in an environment which is largely regulated by, organized by, and served by technologies.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Looking at the Q&A, there are already a few questions flowing in, so that's good. Keep them coming. We'll address them in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question because there was already stated that the population probably is getting smaller and smaller. And in chapter 2, there are some consequences of Robonomics being discussed. And one of them is technological unemployment. Which boundaries do there need to be to avoid that too many people are going to be unemployed? Is there something which you have already in mind, a consideration in that sense? And it's either Stan or Greg who wants to answer.
I'll let Stanislav start with that.
Okay, thank you.
The hard questions he gets first, and then I'll think it through. I'm slower.
We see the pattern, Craig.
Yeah. Technological. Probably I will need to start a little bit earlier. We have seen several technological revolutions in the last 200 plus years, but always in each of them, the revolution, the technology was replacing some people, but it was creating more jobs because it was replacing some tasks, for usually highly repetitive tasks or heavy physical tasks. But what we see with the current technological revolution is that technology is replacing many cognitive tasks, and technology is not only going to be in the factory. Technology is going to be in our homes. It will be as AI is going to be marketing manager, is going to be financial advisor, trader on the stock exchange, and many other things which were up to now considered quite focused for reserved for tourism. Actually, a few months ago, I co-authored a paper which was focusing on which created a marketing plan for a hotel entirely by ChatGPT. So if ChatGPT can do it now, imagine what we will have as technology even in less than 10 years. But with the when you increase the number of tasks and the variety of tasks which technologies can automate, then practically we can have a doubt whether at one point this will not lead to technological unemployment. It is feasible, it is likely, but it does not mean that it will that it is a guaranteed event. It may turn out that the technology will create more jobs than we actually have. However, if we do have a technological unemployment, then this means that work will not be the primary source of revenue of households. This is current income, salaries it is, but people will need to start, governments will need to find other ways, like universal basic income, for example. This means receiving money without working, but probably money with which you have to spend for limited time span in order to limit the potential for inflation. So we may think about other sources of incomes for people, because otherwise, when people have too much free time and they don't have and then don't have sources to sustain themselves, this may lead to social revolutions. And the French Revolution will be something like a comic book for this one. That's why societies will need to be prepared.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, do you have something to add?
Yeah, the consequences too. I mean, what we already see is that AI, more than robotics, AI threatens white collar work, first and foremost, like accounting, law. These things are much more easily automated than some other jobs. We're going to find the first people that sort of lose their jobs will be a lot of these people. And Stanislav, feel free to disagree with me. He often does, so, but he should feel free to anyway. But people such as lawyers, accountants, we won't need as many of them. We will need skilled ones, but not as many. The people that repair your refrigerator will need skilled people still, because robots will not be able to do a lot of the and I've seen this from my research, is that, the people in hotels, that it's almost impossible to automate their jobs so far. The people that repair things, for example, I followed one man, and he pulled out a motor that was burned out. He had to analytically take it apart, figure out what was wrong with it, figure out how to repair it, or whether it was worth repairing versus buying a new one. That's a very, very, very skilled thing to do. You have to have skills, dexterity, intelligence, to make up, for example, the sort of the work plan for part-time workers for the next week. That's easier to figure out, who works what days and how many hours. That can be automated. And there are all sorts of other things, check in, check out. This can all be automated now and very easily. So we have to think about sort of one of the consequences is who becomes unemployed. And we also have the other basic issue is we're going to need people that are intelligent, skilled, educated, not a lot of them. What happens to the rest of humanity? We even have an issue with humanity at this point. That's, how many unskilled, simple jobs do we need to be done? That's hard to find people.
Indeed, because is this then the future for everybody? That's indeed.
Right.
But I got one pressing question, actually, because I hear a lot about technology, but what I, in that sense, maybe missed in the book is the notification about sustainability, because, well, in essence, tech eats kind of power for breakfast. So there's a lot going on in that sense. How did you consider, or do you consider, the sustainability part in this?
Funny you should ask. Chapter 10 deals with sustainability issues, and sort of how AI will help create more sustainable, but a lot of it is efficiency. How do you run organizations in a more efficient way? Humans can be quite silly because they make decisions based upon emotions, and that may not always be the best reason or basis for a decision. You can eliminate a lot of waste using proper analytics. And even new technologies and delivery systems will be better. And even when you have fewer people working, they produce less waste because your organization is going to run in a more efficient way. So I mean, there's a sort of panoply of ways in which new technologies can do things more efficiently. And there are problems. For example, the battery is a very awful little thing, and in terms of sustainability, it's not a good thing. It's mined from places that you don't want to know about. They burn the current lithium battery burns at a very high temperature, so it's kind of dangerous. When you get in the airplane now, they tell you if you drop your telephone, allow the steward or whatever to assist in getting it out, because if it catches on fire, it could be a real mess. So, I mean, there's a lot of problems with these technologies. Things will get better, hopefully. I don't think they're going to get less efficient, less safe. So, I mean, there's a lot to be said about sustainability. There's a whole chapter 10. I invite all the people out there to read it. You're going to love it. All about sustainability.
Yeah. When I read chapter 10, the first thing that popped to mind was the movie Wall-E. Maybe you've heard of it. It's a Disney movie about a really small, cute waste disposal robot. Because in the movie, it's all about consumerism, etc. So people create so much waste. They have to flee from the planet, and they just live in the spaceships, and they get fatter and fatter because they're doing nothing. And it's really interesting to see that could be a scenario, of course.
one of the things I think with sustainability is, to a large extent, now Stanislav may disagree, I don't think we've ever talked about this, that it'll largely take care of itself, because with the reduction in human population, because we're going to go up to about 9 billion people, and then there'll be a fairly rapid decline after that. The decline in population, well, I think will take care of a lot of sustainability issues that people have right now. Will be fewer people, and we'll be able to consume at higher levels, I think, if there's anything left to consume. No, that's by that time. But the issue with people either choosing not to have children or not being able to have children, which I think is almost as big a problem, maybe larger, is going to continue, and I don't see an end to it. I mean, all you have to do is look at sperm qualities globally. They're going down, 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 all sorts of problems. So that's going to be a recurring problem, especially in the developed countries. And the solutions to that, there's only 3 solutions to the problems in the developed countries in terms of labor. And the quick fix is the Robonomic one.
Yeah. I have a question. Yeah, I have a question here on paper, and let's see, Zanda Serdane, I hope I pronounced it right. We have the same question. So the question is, what would be the implications of Robonomics for the higher education institutions? Because of course, we're here at the Hotel Management School, and we still want to deliver high quality, enthusiastic professionals. But yeah, on the other side, you're having robots. So does that collide, or how do you see those two mixed? And I'm going to ask Craig first, because then Stanislav can have a break and.
Well, he's enjoying this break. Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot. First of all, I think we're already at a stage in which a lot of the classes we teach could be automated, or are already semi-automated if you hadn't noticed it. I don't know those of you in Europe, but in the US, we do a lot of multiple choice questions online with students. The teachers have less grading to do, and there's no reason to think that artificial intelligence can't grade, for example, a student essay. If students are actually writing essays, and maybe it's AI that writes the essays and AI that grades it, that could be what's happening. It might already be happening, at least half of that equation. And so in terms of education, there's going to be a lot that's automated. And I envision less demand for people in the educational field, because a lot of those are white collar jobs. They're going to go automated, very much so. But we're going to need a different quality of education for people, because you're going to need people that are computer savvy, but not necessarily doing the hard work of programming, because AI will do a lot of that. But they'll be able to understand the limitations and capabilities of different technologies. Simultaneously, they're going to need to develop really good emotional intelligence skills to deal with customers, because that's what's left of the human customers. They're going to have to deal with those, and also have to understand how to deal with robotic and AI generated customers. Stanislav,
in basics,
you can tell me when I'm wrong, Stan.
But in basics, Craig, you say focus on the emotional part for the skills and on the computer science part, but not the programming side. Understanding how it works is helpful. That's in essence it. Okay.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, it's very difficult to add something after this very comprehensive answer by Craig. I completely agree that many of the tasks in a university can be easily automated and delivered by AI. Probably in the future, universities will be largely provide virtual courses rather than physical. However, of course, for hospitality, we will need to have culinary courses or basic hospitality courses that will need to be face-to-face. I completely agree that students will need to know how to use technology, how to make decisions what technology to do, how to use technology to create experiences for employees, for customers, and how to make strategic decisions for the technology. But the basic things but the basic knowledge, but the basic things within a company, they will be largely automated, and universities will need to redesign their curriculum towards soft skills and towards technology-related skills, digital skills. These are the two big things that they will need to develop.
The university,
and of course green skills, green skills, because things will need to be done in a sustainable way.
But the university we have is sort of descendant of sort of the Catholic monastery, and I think it's becoming an antiquated sort of system of education and training. One concern I do have is the externality. I wonder about how literate future generations will be, because if you don't actually have to write something, AI will do it, and you can proofread it. Maybe we won't have such a literate population. We already see a decline in global intelligence, which is a fairly new thing, which is a concern that, for the past, 100 years or so since we've been measuring it, humans have gotten smarter and smarter. And now that's sort of reversed. And I expect too, life expectancy will also stabilize and probably reverse.
In the meantime, Frederick, his announcement and request to send in some questions for the Q&A has had this result. So I would love to continue with that, but we have a lot of questions. Though if the answers can be kind of a little bit compact, then we might be able to deal with all of them. One of the next questions, which is posted by Anonymous in this case, is what are the key issues of human ethics that are raised by the book? To either Stan or Craig. So what are the key issues?
Stanislav is smarter than I am.
Okay, the key issues of human ethics that are raised by the book, I would say that probably the main thing, this is how we use the technology. Because practically at the end of the day, technology is a tool. This is how we use it to create experiences for customers, for employees, to do something useful for society and for the customers. So how we use the technology is a main issue. So everything else, like privacy, technological unemployment, relationships between AI, robots, and humans, at the end of the day, is a basic human decisions. This is the key thing and the key message of the book.
Okay.
Which I would say.
We have another question, and it's about regulations. What top 2 or 3 type of regulations should be put in place maybe tomorrow?
Ooh.
Regarding robots?
That's a good question. That's a good question. What do you think, Stanislav?
Yeah. It all depends on the time frame. Because if we talk about explanatory AI, this means, one of the main issues of artificial intelligence is that the decisions it takes are not always explainable. So it's not always clear how it reached a particular outcome. So having an explainable AI is something that is vital. The European Union, with its AI Act, is leading the regulations in this field. But later on, we would need legislation that gives some basic rights to artificial intelligence entities, to artificial autonomous agents. For example, the right to have an account, the right to make financial transactions, the right to own assets. Because at one point these technologies will become sufficiently smart that they may have even that they will take even better economic decisions than humans. And if this is the case, why not have them as independent economic agents? Of course, this will probably raise many questions. Why? Like, isn't this going to eliminate some of the power of humans in society? But of course, we cannot answer all the questions in the book, and this will be for future. These answers will be provided in the future. But anyway, such regulations would be necessary.
We have a lot of questions from S. Mitra. And there are 10 questions, and I try to summarize them. If I read them quickly, it's all about aircraft, air catering, and trays, and all that type of stuff. Can you maybe shed your light on how robonomics, robots, AI can have a positive or negative influence on maybe the catering for planes and maybe related to employment or other stuff?
Well, probably we can divide this into several parts. If we treat catering separately as preparing food, it's not different from preparing food for in a restaurant. And in fact, it has the benefit of economies of scale, because you don't produce a single plate like in an a la carte restaurant, but you'll be producing thousands and thousands of dishes. So you can use automation, some basic appliances or robotics in order to automate the preparation of the food here. However, within the plane, I doubt that you can use efficiently robots because of physical constraints of the size of the plane, and also considering that the plane is going up and down, so it will be very difficult for the robot to keep the balance. But if you reorganize the operations there, you actually, at least for the moment, probably using robotics will not be quite needed. But within the preparation of the food, that's I don't see any problem here.
Yeah, and AI can also, identify anomalies in the food. Already AI locates, what is it? They make much fewer errors in terms of identifying cancers than human doctors do, who are specialized in identifying cancers. So it's just a matter of looking for that pattern. What doesn't fit the pattern? What's an anomaly in the food preparation? I also think, Stanislav, if we see airplanes are redesigned inside the way we expect hotels to be designed differently inside, maybe robots can be used more effectively. But you can also have a service delivery system which is cheaper. And the cheapest thing is to do what most low-cost carriers now do, which is nothing. No food, no drink. That's and it's cheaper. And you can choose that, or you can have the high touch response to that and have people actually delivering delicious food to you at your table, but you'll pay for it.
It's really interesting. Yesterday, I used the dilemma of low-cost hotels with robots or high-touch experience at cost. Well, it's only for the rich. A lot of students didn't see it. It was too much for them. They were just like, how can it be possible that you have robots doing 80% of the guest experience and only for the rich, etc. So that's really an interesting thing I read in the book. And I think for a lot of people that's still hard to grasp. I do have a question there. We just talked about the interior and designing. You have a nice chapter about that, chapter 8, development of robot-friendly hospitality facilities. And if I just summarize a little bit, do you see humans roaming the halls in the daytime and robots roaming the hotels in the nighttime? And how do architects, do they really have to redesign hotels to be robot-friendly, or tell us something about it.
Well, I can give you an example from Stanislav. You've seen the video of me a few years ago. We had the delivery robot in the hotel. There was a gap like this. The robot could not get over to get into the lift. So a human being had to push the robot so that it could deliver M&Ms to me. M&Ms, which are delicious little sweet things in there with peanuts, had to be pushed to deliver this to me. And why? That's because the lift is designed for a human, not a robot. Now, for any of us, stepping over something like this is not a problem, hopefully. But for the robot, it was a problem. Now, that means we have to produce robots that are a little more robust, possibly, and can deal with different issues. But also, it makes sense to have designs that are more robot friendly and can make it easy for them to navigate through those places. Now, it's really a question of current technologies and what's needed in terms of, does the robot need to see? How much does it have to see? Can it see in the dark? Will it need lights on? What are the backgrounds that it may or may not need? There's all sorts of questions about the technologies and the way they interface with what can be done and what needs to be done in a particular environment. And then we have to shape the environments to be appropriate for that. Stanislav, you can add to that.
Yeah, I would like to say that the current requirements for wheelchair access in hotels they're practically the same, nearly the same as the requirements for a robot to be able to navigate within the premises of the hotel. So practically, hotels are becoming more and more robot friendly. But of course, this needs to be considered at the design stage. It will be more difficult this to be done later. Also, what we have found with Craig in some of our previous studies, and this is also mentioned in the chapter by our colleagues, is that there's a reverse relationship between investing in the building and the price of and the intelligence of the robot that you need. So if you invest in the building to make it more robot friendly, then you can have a more basic and cheaper robot to navigate within the premises, because the environment will help the robot navigate. But in the other case, if the environment is not so robot friendly, for example, if the robot needs to climb stairs, instead of having a wheeled robot that will use the lift and then move around across the floors, then you will need a legged robot, and the legged robot is tens of times more expensive and more difficult to make than a wheeled robot. So that's for sure. If companies want to use robots, they need to choose what they invest in, and it's easier to invest in within the facilities. They may have some sensors, they can have digital map of the facilities, so it all depends on how they want to make it.
Yeah, cool. I would like to go for a wrap up maybe, because do you have one more question?
No, I do not have a question, but in the chat there's in the Q&A, there's the question from Siren Dogan. Indeed, what should destination management organization do to adapt to a robonomic world? Does your answer now already kind of partially answer this question, or do you have any additional information to that?
Well, probably I may say, thank you, Stenden. This is a great question. What I can say is that the DMOs, they will need to consider that many of the decision makers in the robonomic world regarding tourist trips will not be humans, but it will be artificial autonomous agents. So probably they will need to develop advertising campaigns directed towards these artificial autonomous agents that make such decisions, either for the tourist companies, for non-tourist companies, or for the tourists themselves.
Yeah, cool. I would like to go to the final Q&A question, and then we're going to wrap it up, if that's okay. Great question from Ian, I see. What will the second edition look like? Because you already talked about, you have a lot of ideas for the next version of the book. What will it look like? Do you have any ideas yet?
Oh, yes, many ideas. But so this book shows how things we think will develop within the next 50 years. But what we need is a book how to prepare tourist companies for these 50 years. So probably the next book will need to focus specifically on micro level, on company level, and something like the automated tourist company of the future, and how such companies can be managed.
Yeah, thank you. Shall we go to the
summary?
Yeah. First, Craig, Stan, is there anything left you want to say? Did we ask every question you wanted to answer? Greg wants to sell the book. Really good. I'm going to announce a special discount code.
It's beautiful. It's actually a beautiful cover. Those of you that can see it, this is AI generated art. And it was kind of a fun process to go through this and how to make that cover. And you know, there are
also,
little anomalies that come out and things had to be changed. I think the yacht, we had a yacht in the first version that was flying in the air for some reason. And I remember earlier iterations, Stanislav made like travel in the future, and there was like an airplane in the airport, inside the airport, little things like that. But AI seems to be getting better and better as time goes on. And it was fun to go through that. Stanislav, you want to add in on that?
Yeah, I wanted to say that, well, at the beginning you said that I'm a Star Wars fan, and really I am. So yes. This is something for the audience. We deliberately put some Easter eggs, Star Wars Easter eggs in the book. So I have a little challenge for the audience. Those that find such an Easter egg will receive a beer or wine from me, depending on his preferences.
That's
so
really
this
nice.
will be, but of course this needs to be proved with the exact page where it comes from and where from Star Wars it comes from, which means that you need to read the book and to watch the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, and I think there are 9 movies, and maybe you have also some movies in between. So yeah, that's going to be a real marathon. Thank you very much. We ask a lot of interesting questions with a lot of more interesting answers. And we all talk about automation, robots, AI, maybe what the future will bring. Important aspects are going to be basic income, the social aspect, ethics. What are we going to do with all the humans here? Now we're going to replace them. Sometimes I find it also a bit scary. On the other hand, I think, well, it's my kids or my kids' kids who will have to deal with that answer. But I do think something needs to happen now or soon, and not after 20 or 30 years. So when we talk about the book, there is a special discount code, and it's FTRW50. That's Frederick, Thomas, Richard, William, 50. And when you purchase the book directly from Channel View. So a discount code from Channel View if you're going to use this code. And a recording of the webinar will also be sent to everyone who registered within the next 10 working days.
That leaves me actually with thanking Professor Craig Webster, Professor Stanislav Ivanov. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this webinar. We truly valued to be kind of the first ones who were able to read this book, which is highly interesting. Thank you, Ian Yeoman, for organizing this webinar. Frederick, thank you for being my co-host. Watch out on Treenet, on LinkedIn, or the creatingwhatsnext.com website for next webinars, where the next webinar is expected to be somewhere around at the end of November. That's being hosted via Treenet and LinkedIn. Any further topics will be discussed over there as well. For now, it is time for us to say thank you so much. We say thank you for joining, and looking forward to meeting you up in the next webinar.